Hello, and welcome to today's episode of The Ways of the World, where we focus upon a different country and culture and discover the different ways of the world through the lenses of Villanova students and faculty. These Villanovans have studied abroad and are here to share their experiences. I'm your host, Ava Petrosky. Today we're exploring through the Czech Republic, and with us here today I have Villanova University junior Emma Hlousek, who traveled to the Czech Republic this summer for a study abroad experience. Thank you so much for being here, Emma.
Ava, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Tell me about the Czech Republic.
It's unbiased. It's one of my favorite places in the world, partially because my father is from there, but also because this exposure through the study abroad program was incredible. And I feel like if I had to pick a European country to live in for the rest of my life, it would be Prague.
Why?
Because there was so much to learn. I felt like everywhere I was looking, whether I was just walking down the street to get a cup of coffee, there was something new to see, someone to talk to. And I felt so at home.
Had you been there before with your dad?
I had. We've been there with my family probably every other summer since I was born. So I felt really familiar. So that was a good kind of confidence going into it. But this was the first time I was there on my own without my family. And so it was really cool. And I had my cousins were there and my dad's aunt. And so that was fun. I got to see them a little bit, but I felt very independent there.
Yeah. Did you find yourself leading the tour group?
I did. And before we left, we had a Pizza in Prague meeting with all the students who were going and the professors. And the professor had already known that I was Czech. And she told the whole group that Emma's going to be leading the group chat. And if there's anything, ask Emma. And so at first that made me a little bit nervous. But then once we got there, I was so excited. And actually, it made me so proud to be from there when people were asking me for ideas. Things like someone was asking me where they can exchange their money and things like that. So I loved it.
That's awesome. Tell me more about the academic program.
So it was 6 weeks. The first 3 weeks were an English program, and it was like Czech literature. So we read Kundera, we read Kafka, and it was incredible. So we read Kafka's Metamorphosis, and then we went to the Kafka Museum, which was super cool. It was even modeled after his home a little bit. So we got to really feel like we saw where he was writing, things like that. And then the third 3 weeks were history and politics. So we learned all about post-communism in Europe and focused on Prague. And so we would talk about something and then go see the memorial, or our apartments were right by the square where the revolution was. So we went there and we kind of just stand there and took it all in. So it was nice.
So does the program relate to your field of study at all?
Well, at the time it didn't, because I was very science focused, but I've always loved English and I'm an English minor. And I saw the flyer and it was Prague and it was an English program and a little bit of history, and I thought this was made for me. So I went and it was some core credits, but then also just out of my own interest. But then actually it inspired me to now pursue politics and English further instead of the science track.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. How many Villanovans were on the trip with you?
14 of us.
Wow. Okay.
And everybody was a political science major except for me and this other girl who ended up becoming my best friend through that. So it was fun.
So did you know anyone going into it?
No. And I didn't even think about that as a factor going into it, even when we sat down and we had dinner, things like that. But I remember I got on the plane, my parents dropped me off, and I sat down and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going on this trip with 14 people that I've never met before, and I have no idea what to expect from them. But we got there and it was a seamless transition, and I had so much fun with them.
Did you ever feel homesick away for 6 weeks?
Not really. When I did, my aunt, we went and got dinner, or my cousins came to visit, but my family was also doing the trip at the same time, and so I met them for one weekend, and so I got to see them, yeah.
Where was your family going?
Budapest.
Okay.
And so we had a big event there with the family, so I also went over for a weekend, and then my dad came and stayed with me for a few days, so it was fantastic.
Did you do any side travel on weekends?
Yes. We had 2 that were part of the curriculum, so we went to Munich and to Berlin. And then we went to Brno, which is the second largest city in Czech Republic, and so that was just fun. My whole focus was that since I'm there, I wanted to really get to know the Czech Republic. And then the other weekends, we stayed in Prague and we really just explored it there.
What are some must-see landmarks of Prague?
Well, I would say the Prague Castle is beautiful. We walked in there and everybody was just silent. And then the cathedral right next to it, it has these like huge stained glass windows. I've never seen stained glass windows that big. And I would also say, this is not as much of a landmark, but there's this little island kind of in the center of Prague where you walk over the bridge and you stop there and they have these city beavers and there's just people talking and sitting and they have little kind of pop-up restaurants. And so I would say that's a must-see.
Real beavers?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
We were so surprised. Even I didn't know that going into there. But they were crawling up there and people were feeding them.
You fed it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. They're a little vicious, but...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that. How did you navigate through language barriers?
I speak a little bit of Czech just from my father, kind of on a conversational level. So I actually felt pretty confident going in, and then I got there and I was shocked just because I wasn't keeping up with it as much. But I thought it was pretty easy to pick up. And then also we had a Czech tutor come into our class one day and he was teaching us like the basic things. And then they're really excited to speak English over there. So there were times when I tried to speak Czech and they would respond in English, but it was nice to kind of immerse myself in that.
And how did you find language barriers when you went to Germany, or you said you went to Budapest?
Yes. Well, Budapest, Hungarian is my first language and I speak fluent. So that was fun to kind of, feel at home. And then Germany, I have been learning German since my sophomore year of high school. And I remember that just kind of never came up in the conversation with everybody. And we went and we did a tour and we went up in this tower and we had to buy tickets. And someone went up to buy the tickets and there was an issue and I stepped in and I started speaking German. Everybody was like, wow. And then afterwards they said that everyone has to stick around me because they know we're going to be okay. But that was really cool. I felt excited to get to practice that in Germany.
So how many languages do you speak?
I speak fluently English, Hungarian, and Spanish. And then German and Czech, very basic.
Wow. That is impressive. Are you aspiring to become fluent in Czech or German?
I am. German is, I think I'm further along, but Czech I would love to, just because to speak more with my family, and I would love to read in Czech. Like the text that we read for these classes in Prague, I would love to read them in their original language. Mm-hmm. So that's one of my goals for sure.
Do you think that there would be a little bit of a different meaning from the texts because maybe some things were lost in translation over to English?
I think so. And I think that would be so interesting to point out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. If you could describe Prague or the Czech Republic in 3 words, what would those be?
I would say this is a good question. I would say youthful, because there was a lot of opportunity. I think as a college student, it was the perfect place to be. And then I would say historic, which seems pretty, but it just is. Everywhere you go, there's something. And then I would also say international, because I mean, to us, it already kind of is international, but even there, they have, the cuisine, they have pretty much every country, every continent. And even walking down the street, you hear all these different languages. I think it's such a great place for all these young people that are, finding new things going there. So those would be my 3 words.
Can you tell me more about the food in Prague?
Yes. So I'll tell you about the Czech cuisine. So I was really excited because I've grown up with that and I love it. And so the last dinner, we went to a place called Hlousek, and it was very traditional Czech. And so we had like the knedlíky, which is these bread dumplings with pork. And then we had brie, breaded, and all the little salads, like potato salad. They're all kind of mayonnaise based and cabbage. So that's those classics. And then there was a really good Mediterranean place right downstairs below our apartment. And so we were there a lot. And then they had a lot of really good Thai food that we really enjoyed. And then I remember the first night we went to this Italian place. And that was we all kind of sat. And even there, it's the Italian food, but you feel that Czech fusion and their own spices and things like that.
What about desserts?
Oh, desserts, endless. My personal favorite, it's pohádky. So you basically get this big glass cup. And it's filled with ice cream, vanilla ice cream, and then warm raspberry, chocolate syrup, and whipped cream.
Ooh.
That's my go-to. Ooh. I miss it.
What was something that you experienced in Prague that surprised you?
Something that surprised me? I think I would probably say, honestly, how comfortable I felt there. Mm-hmm. I mean, I already had a taste of it, but I felt so immersed, and I felt like I was a true Czech there, And when the 6 weeks were up, I wasn't ready to leave. And I'd expected that after all that time of being away, I would be ready to go, but I was so sad to go.
Did you find it hard to assimilate back to the United States?
I think no. I think because right after that, I did a little trip with my family in Europe, so I felt like I had them in Europe, and then I was with them at home, so I think that made it easy. But no, I felt it was good. As much as I loved it, after I got home, it was good to be home.
Yes, there's no place like home. Of course. Can you walk me through a typical day in your life?
Yes. So we would wake up, and there was another coffee shop right across the apartment. So we would go stop there and get our coffee and our croissant. And then it was about a 30-minute commute to where the classes took place. And so sometimes we would walk, or other times we would take the streetcar, which was also super fun. And then we memorized all the stops and how they said it on the intercom, so that was fun. And then we had class from 9:30 to 11:30, and then we were free to go. So we would get lunch and then walk around. So some days we would go to a museum. One of the days we went up to the Prague Castle. Anytime we weren't in the classroom, we just went and did something. And then all came back, and then sometimes we would make dinner together, or we would all go out and eat somewhere together, and then just kind of debrief what we were doing, and then fell asleep reading the books for the next day. You know, it was so cozy in our shared space, and talked about that. So, and then woke up and did it all over again.
Aw, that's amazing. What was your go-to thing to do if you had any free time?
Walk. I would walk anywhere. My best friend Kat, who I met there, if there was a free second, we just walked. We walked to that little island. We had an ice cream shop that we loved to walk to, and we just went in every single direction. We were kind of in a central point where we lived, and so every day or every week we would go a new path and then explore what was there.
Amazing. Amazing. Did you find anything that really just wowed you that you weren't expecting to see on one of your walks?
I think, the beavers, that was one.
Yeah.
And then that was a shock. And then also, we stumbled upon this it was literally a hole in the wall. Like, there was this brick wall and kind of torn apart, and then inside there was this tiny restaurant, and that was a nice surprise. And we stopped there, and they had bagels, kind of Czech bagels, and it was good.
That's awesome. What were your living arrangements for the program?
We all lived in one apartment complex, and it wasn't even academic or anything like that. It was just a traditional apartment building in Prague. And so our neighbors were just Czechs, going about their life. And so we were split between 3 apartments, and with 3 bedrooms, doubles, 1 huge kitchen and living room. And so that's what we would do. We would all come to one apartment for dinner and bring the tables and chairs from everybody else's apartment and just make a long table. And that's how we shared our meals.
That's amazing. Did you find any challenges trying to assimilate to Czech culture?
Honestly, no. I think it was such an easy transition, and we had a really good orientation into it, and we knew where everything was pretty much right away. And then again, I just felt so comfortable coming from a Czech background already, and having my family there. I knew that if something happened, then I could call my aunt or someone. So,
how far from the apartment complex?
My aunt was about a 20-minute walk, and then my cousins are like a 30-minute drive right outside of Prague, but I still got to see them. Did
they ever hang out with the other students in your program?
No, they're a lot younger, which I should have prefaced, but it was just them and I, and then my aunt and uncle, and so we would walk around, and it was nice to have that taste of home.
We're gonna go back to food.
Perfect.
What's your favorite meal that you had?
I think that last meal at Hlousek, where I had the brie coated in the breadcrumbs, that was fantastic. And then also we had like 2 goodbye dinners because of the 2 sets of professors, and the other one was at this restaurant called Bricks, right on the water along the river, and the Charles Bridge was right next to it. So we were sitting at the base of the bridge having dinner, and it was Italian food, and we just shared a bunch of different pastas, and it was phenomenal.
What's your favorite memory from the entire trip?
My favorite memory would be, so it's probably meeting my best friend there. And this is going to sound silly, but the first week, a lot of us got sick just from something that was going around. And everybody went on their first weekend trip, and she and I stayed back and just really got to know each other. And that's when we started doing our walks. And that was my biggest takeaway from the whole thing. And also we read this book, Letters to a Young Poet, and that book changed my life. I remember we read it, and the next day I was so excited to talk about it. And so now I give that as gifts, and just the lessons from that, and then also reading it while being in Prague just really stuck with me.
What's that book about?
It's it's very philosophical, and it's all these letters about kind of growing up, and it touches on all these things about relationships and just the general path that we all go through. And it's kind of hard to explain, but you have to read it. But it's one of those things where I read it then, and then I plan on every 10 years I want to read it again and then see how I reflect on it based on where I am in my life.
That's amazing.
But it's incredible.
Yeah, good for you. If you could redo any aspect of your Prague study abroad experience, what would it be?
That's a great question. I would say we did do a lot in the downtime, but I would do even more, which I feel like there's never enough time. And then I would also try to find something where we heard about these programs where it's a bunch of international students would come together at a restaurant or even in a park and just hang out, and you could learn, hear their languages, learn from them. Mm-hmm. And I really wish that we would have done one of those.
What's your favorite picture that you took on your trip?
After the welcome dinner, we all went for a walk, and we came across, this was another really surprising spot. We walked over this hill, and then we were on this cliff, essentially overlooking the city, and the sun was going down. There was a beautiful sunset, and there were all these sculptures of these gnomes in that little garden on that cliff. And I took a picture of everybody else taking a picture, all lined up. And to me, that really captures that everybody was just there were so many instances where we got somewhere and it was just silent because everybody was overcome by the beauty or the surprise of it. So that was probably it.
That's amazing. Now, if you had to write a book about your abroad experience, what would you title it?
I would title it Something New.
Ooh.
Because every day there was something new. And whether it was people that I was getting to know within the program or outside the program, or a new landmark, new restaurant, there was always something new. We were never bored.
I love it. Emma, my last question for you is, what advice would you give to someone who wants to travel to the Czech Republic?
I say go. Absolutely go. If there was one advice I could give, it would be go. Mm-hmm. Because you'll never know what you'll find.
Right.
And I think it's such an incredible place for tourists, whether you speak the language or you don't, whether you know anything about Prague or not. And there's so much to learn just in the Czech Republic alone. I say if you are thinking about it, absolutely go.
I love it. Emma, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for watching today's segment of The Ways of the World. I'm Ava Petrosky. See you next time.